Hi, it's Sean J. McCaw coming at you once again for the Eurostep. Thank you for joining. I'm really happy that anyone tunes into this. So I'm especially excited for my guest. But as usual, we're trying to take a look behind the scenes of European basketball. And this show today is not so much about European basketball, but it is around the topic of what players do when they retire or what they want to do when they retire. Some are forced out and some are just old like me and retired. Hero, stand up. I see you, man. Yeah, that's what this is all about career choices that you need to make and prepare for. And that's why I'm really excited to have my guest here. Before we begin, make sure if you want to ask a question to my guest while we're filming, while we're live, then you can either do it by hitting the comment section and throwing it in there, or also where the speech bubble is, and with the question mark, you can throw it in there, and I'll try to infuse your questions while the show is going on. So, yeah, let me get my guest in a second. My guest for tonight is someone who I'm a huge fan of, who's helped me a great deal in the past. When did I? October, or probably around since October. She's helped me out massively, and I'm really excited to have her on. Really happy to have Julia Rock on. She is a career coach and CEO of Rock Career Development, and fortunately for us, she specializes in basketball, which is kind of crazy. We'll talk about that in a little bit, why she chose kind of the basketball route. Probably has something to do with her sneaker fetish, but we'll also talk about that as well. Um, yeah, and so she's helping athletes move outside the game of basketball, not just basketball, but in life in general. And she's got a program called Ball to Boardroom, which is a 60-day coaching program that she'll introduce as well. And it's designed for pro and college athletes to help them successfully transition out of the game and into their normal professional lives. So I'm thrilled to have her on and for her to give her insight to such an important topic. And I will get her in with no further. So she's there. Where's my friend at? Should be coming on that. There she is.
Hello, how are you doing?
What's good, Julia?
Not much, not much. If you see me sweating like a pot cover, it's because I just walked home. So, so I promise that I'm not sweating because of this. It's sweating because I just walked home.
What's the weather like down there in Argentina?
So it's actually it's winter time here, but I
Mhm.
walk very briskly, so hence the sweating. But it's about I guess it's well right now it's about 60 degrees Fahrenheit outside, so it's not too cold. But in July is when the bottom really starts to drop out of the
Really?
temperature. So yeah,
Okay. We're going to talk about that as well, how you transitioned to Argentina.
yeah,
So yeah, let's get started. Normally, how I started off is I explain to the viewers exactly how I know my guests, and I mean, everybody that's ever watched one of my lives will know that I know personally like only 10% of the people that I interview, and that I've reached out to everybody on Instagram in some way, shape, or form, and people have been really forthcoming with my requests to join my show, and I invite people on for different reasons, and you are no different. It's about a year now that I started following you. I started following you through Taj's page. I saw
yeah.
you on Taj's page, so I follow him very closely, and I like what he does. So then I started following you, and then at some point you start getting in conversation with people or ask questions, and really starting out in October when I had my first back surgery, that's when we got really intense.
Yeah.
And I asked you, like, I, everyone, I have to tell you, like, I would reach out to Julia and with like a question that I thought was like she would take like 2 minutes to answer, and it wasn't a 2 minute question. It was going like back and forth all hours of the morning in Argentina, here, on WhatsApp, and just trying to figure out the steps that I needed to take for what I was planning, which is now coming to fruition. And so she helped me a great deal, and for that I'll always be thankful. And so I've always been like asking her questions, and she's always gotten back to me. She's always given me her time, which I am more than appreciative. So everyone out there, she knows her shit. She's on her game. So you guys will see once she starts talking that she really knows what she's talking about, and I'm excited to have her on. So thank you for that, Julia, once again. And yeah, so let's get started. Um,
And thank you for having me here in the first place.
hey,
I've been excited for us to work together and to talk. And like you said, all hours of the morning, those WhatsApp voice memos are going back and forth.
like eight
Um,
minutes long.
I didn't even realize that voice notes could go that long on WhatsApp until you and I started corresponding. So that should say something. But always happy to help. So thank you so much for having me on the show.
No problem. So, before we get started, can you introduce yourself and your company and what you do to the viewers so they know exactly what you do? I don't want to take
Sure.
words out of your mouth and mess anything up.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, hey everyone. So, I'm Julia Rock. So, I am a career and leadership development coach, and I am the CEO of Rock Career Development. And we specialize in helping athletes, specifically basketball athletes, to translate their existing skills into high-paying, in-demand careers. We know that a lot of athletes, kind of trying to find their way after the game. It's very difficult. And with my years of experience as a career coach, seeking to make that path a lot easier for them. I've been a career coach now kind of informally since 2006 and more formally since 2013. I was helping corporate professionals for a good long while. And then in 2021, I decided to shift my focus specifically to basketball athletes. I won't come on here and cap. I am not a full-time entrepreneur. I'm a corepreneur. So my day job is that I am in finance management. So that's how I got into Argentina. So I run an accounting and finance division here in Argentina for oil and gas companies. So that's a little bit about me. And I will say specifically for my company, we focus on Black and brown athletes. We love everybody. But I tell folks I'm unapologetically about Black people. And that's, I want to make sure that people who look like me have the right opportunities.
Yes, I can feel that and I appreciate that very much. So tell me, what is your athletic background? Did you hoop?
No, I have no athletic abilities whatsoever. I can't run or walk even in a straight line. And so it's really that I grew up watching the game of basketball, watching Michael Jordan and John Starks and all these people, from the time I was a kid. And my dad coached my church basketball team, and my brother played in high school and so forth. And so I just fell in love with the game of basketball when I was a kid, but no athletic ability whatsoever. Can't even come on here and lie. No athletic ability.
So you touched on it earlier, and you said that you specialize a lot with people of color or basketball players in general. How did the thought process come that you wanted to work with a specific group? Of course, not excluding anyone, but you especially wanted to work with people of color and athletes or basketball players. How did that come to play?
Yeah, so it's actually a little bit of a journey, honestly, because when I first started my career coaching business, it's like I want to help everyone, and which was cool, but I realized that the playing, because I actually started out focusing on people of color, and then I morphed into I want to help everyone
Hmm.
for years, and I felt like I'm not serving the population fully that needs my services the most. And so I went back to making sure that I had very singular messages when it came to my corporate career professionals. And so I did that for a few years. And then with one of my corporate coaching clients, her brother actually played overseas basketball. He was in the NBA, and then he went overseas, and then he was coming back to start a career after basketball. And she said, "Hey, can you help my brother?" And she's a Black woman. And she's like, "Hey, can you help my brother?" And so I said, "I've never coached a basketball player before, but we're gonna roll the dice and see how we can do here." And for me, it was a great experience. One, because I was able to help him get prepared and secure a job opportunity. But then also for me, just being able to reignite some of the coaching concepts that I love so much. And then I had the thought process of, he can't be the only one, right? So I'm like, if the people who look like me, I mean, some people, they have, you know, huge endorsements when they get out of the game, and so they don't never really have to work again. But
Right.
for the majority of people,
It's not
the
like that.
majority of people, it's not like that, right? Not everybody's Steph Curry, right? So you've got to think about, you know, what are the career options after that? And so that's really what sparked it for me, was thinking about it, very similar to how I started my business at the very, very beginning. And I'll just tell you a quick story before we move
Go
on.
ahead.
When I started my business back in 2013, at that time for my corporate career, I was going to career fairs, and I saw the stark difference in performance between Black candidates. So I won't even do the POC thing. I saw the difference between Black candidates and then non-Black candidates, and how they were delivering themselves, their professionalism, how they were conveying their experience. And I'm just like, they are not cutting it. I'm like, I work for one of the largest corporations in the world. Like, you guys have to bring your A game. And it's not because they didn't have the skills. You could see it on the resume, but no one had taught them the
Right.
professionalism and how to deliver themselves. And I said, I've got this background, because I built it up in college, going to all the career workshops and other things. And I said, how can I now help the people who look like me and help to level the playing field so they can start to present themselves better?
Right.
And that's really why I wanted to focus on Black and brown folks. And like I said, I kind of meandered from that for a while to try to serve everybody, but then I got back on message. And then when it came to athletes, basketball is a sport I already loved. And then, like I said, being able to help my client, help her brother find an opportunity, it just seemed like a perfect fit.
Let's go back to your very first client, your very first basketball client. Was he already transitioning, or was he out of the game already once you started working with him? What was his situation before you started working with him? And then how did you help him after?
So by that time he was back in the US looking
Okay.
for opportunities. So
Okay.
so he had just kind of just come
Right.
off of playing. And so that's kind of that like transition phase, like right, just getting back from
Right.
overseas. And so how I was able to help him was help him to really start to evaluate kind of what is it that you want to do now, right? Because there are a lot of things that were available, you know, that he could go after, but it's like, well, what do you actually want to do? And so we looked into coaching, and then wanting to be a player agent. And so we started to evaluate those career paths, understanding what it would take, understanding what connections he had that he could
Right.
leverage, because a lot
Right.
of athletes don't realize how many connections they've already got built in,
Right.
especially if you've played in the NBA. And so we really started to evaluate those options, and then we were able to start to craft his messaging around how do you want to present yourself, how do you want to be seen, how do you start conversations, how do you interview, how do you write a resume,
Mm.
all these kinds of things. Because when you're playing basketball and that's all you've done, you haven't had to have a resume, you
Right.
haven't had to have a LinkedIn profile, all these things that us corporate folks do all the time. For a lot
Mhm.
of athletes, that's not what they do. And so we were able to go through the basics of that. And then he was able to secure a coaching opportunity after that, coaching and player development. But, you know, from us working together, and then helping to make sure that he was able to represent himself well in certain conversations. Because even if you have a connection, and I just want to share this with the folks who are listening, even if you have a connection and people are willing to vouch for you, it is possible for you to go in there and fumble the bag because you don't know how to present yourself. You
Right.
can't get your message across, the value that you offer. So it's not just enough to network and have connections. You've got to be able to communicate your value as to why people should bring you on.
That's really important. What are some of the challenges you face working particularly with athletes as opposed to corporate execs or other people that are not athletes? What are the challenges what you face particularly with athletes?
So for the athletes, I feel like it's a lot of the kind of fundamentals when it comes to,
Basics.
it's the basics, right? It's about putting resumes together, it's
Hmm.
putting LinkedIn together, and also being able to think through career options. Because if all you've done is be an athlete and you haven't really done any internships or build
Right.
relationships externally, all you know is the sport, right? So in terms, so it's really helping them to think, more broadly about what they can do, and helping them to not limit themselves. Like, you don't have to just be a coach. You don't
Mhm.
have to just go, be an agent or whatever the case is. It's like there's a whole world out there. You can go do marketing, sales, all of these things are open to you. And then, like I said, a lot of the fundamentals that people who search for jobs in the corporate space, they know. They may not do it well, but they at least know that they should be doing it. For a
Right.
lot of athletes, those fundamentals may not be there if they haven't had to kind of flex those muscles at any point.
That's interesting because for me, when I think about my own journey, when I was in high school, I was always in basketball camps or playing somewhere, AAU circuit, things like that. Then once I got to college, is the same thing. You're not allowed to work during the while you're in school because you're on scholarship. And then in the summers, it's too short to where am I going to go work at Taco Bell or something like that. And then when I came overseas, same thing. Your life is pretty much dedicated to your sport. So you look, I never filled out a application in my life. In my life, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
it wasn't until I got the job that I have now that I even had some kind of basic knowledge of a resume. And my best friend helped me with my resume. It was like I was like, I don't know nothing, man. Like, can you help me out? And he pretty much sent me his, and I just like changed the name and
Just copy and paste it. I
I
mean,
was like,
listen, you got to do what you got to do, man. It's like, but that's really
that's
it.
the
It's the
reality.
idea that you haven't had to do this, and so it's not that you're not capable, but you just haven't had to.
Right.
And so even going back to my first client, he's like, "Hey, this company needs a resume, and I don't know how to do one." And I said, "Luckily, that's part of the program, so I will help you with that." But he really was just like, I don't know what to do with this. And so I said, okay, well, this is how you structure it, and this is why, so that he knows not just the mechanics, but the why behind, so that just in case he doesn't have help or a friend in the future, he has the concepts to pull on so he can make the adjustments for himself.
Yeah, I mean, that's such valuable information because I was just lost. It was just like, oh my God, I can't even remember what I ate yesterday. How am I supposed to remember stuff for resume and things like that? And
From
that,
10 years ago, right? From
yeah,
10 years
longer,
ago.
longer. I'm showing my age, but it's longer. And that's the crazy thing is like you're just so dedicated to your sport that you lose focus of everything that's outside and what I would say, I don't mean this in a mean way, but what normal people do every day and send out resumes and make those contacts and keep those contacts and things like that. We just totally lose focus with. I think now with the internet age, it's maybe a little bit easier than when I was playing, but still, I mean, if I'm overseas for 10 years playing pretty much 10 months a year, going back home for two, then going back overseas, how am I going to make connections? How am I going to, I can't take an internship. I can't, so it's difficult. And I think that's something that players probably can't learn soon enough. And that's actually my next question. What's the ideal time for an athlete to start thinking ahead to, okay, I need to start planning my next move?
So ideally, it's high school. Ideally, it's high school. I mean, if you're already in the sport, I mean,
Right,
that's still a good time because at least you're starting at some point.
right.
But ideally, it's high school, right? Because that's when people are starting to, especially for the premier athletes. I mean, they're playing ball and they're being seen by then. But that's the ideal time for you because you've developed a certain level of maturity, and then you can really start to think through. Okay, yes, I would love to go pro and all those wonderful things, but in real life we know that most student athletes don't become pros. So this
Right.
is a time for me to really think through, what can I do? Because that will help you when in selecting the right university to go to,
Hmm.
in selecting the right major to go to. So you're not just wowed by, oh, we say we can do this in your basketball program, but can I study something that will allow me to get a
Right.
job? Should
Right.
I break my leg? Should something happen?
Right.
So the ideal time frame is high school. The next best time is in college. Thinking about your what major you want to go into, because this is no tea or shade to people who have these majors, but a lot of these kind of business administration and psychology
Fluff
degrees,
majors.
the fluff majors, and again, no tea or shade if you had that degree, I promise, but you're not equipped to go and get a job because you're not skilled in doing anything specific. right? And so you've got a broad degree, and it's like, well, what can someone hire you to do other than be like a bank teller? And so being able to select a major that will allow you to earn a good income should the worst happen, and that you'll be able to provide for your family, and then you won't feel lost after you graduate. Because let's say because what also for student athletes, what they suffer with is that sense of being lost after you graduate, right? Because
Right.
what do I do now that I'm no
Losing your
longer
identity.
what's my identity? But if you're able to start grooming yourself from high school and really building who you are, and not attaching yourself solely to your sport, knowing that you have other interests, other passions, other things you can do, by the time you get to graduation, you don't have that sense of I'm nothing else other than an athlete, because you spent that time kind of nurturing that other part of yourself.
I'm going to jump to a teammate question here. King of Queens, how you doing? One of my former guests, actually. Do you think there's a big difference in the men's approach versus the women's approach to finding your career because of the disparity in salaries in sports?
So I will say that just for the clients that I've worked with, a lot of the women are focused on how's the way to say it. A lot of them are focused on trying to find a career opportunity, so finding a job of some kind. And I find that for men, a lot of them are some of them are looking for job opportunities, but a lot of them are looking for entrepreneurship opportunities. And I will say that many of the women that I've worked with, they haven't many of them haven't made it to pro, like WNBA or anything just yet. And more of the men that I've worked with have either been in the NBA or close or something like that. So from an approach standpoint, I feel like some of the paths are different because the opportunities are different, and so forth, between the men and the women. So, if you've gone down a different path, you may have a different mindset. And I also think for women, as we also sometimes we limit ourselves in what we want to do, or what we think we can achieve. Sometimes we put ourselves in these boxes where I feel like for men, they've got a more throw it at the wall, I'm going to go after it thing. And that's not just for athletes or anything like that. I feel like for just women, in general, because even I've seen that in corporate professionals, where I don't know if we trust ourselves enough in terms of what we can go after and what we can go and do. So the paths for my clients have been different, and so that has lent itself to kind of what direction they want to go down.
I've got another teammate question from Travis. Is graphic design a bad major?
Is graphic design
I think he
a
means
bad major?
if it's a fluff major.
So,
It's not basket weaving 101.
well, and so what I'll say about graphic design, and just to say thank you, Christina, for the prior question. So Travis, when it comes to graphic design, the question is, what do you plan to do with that? Are you trying to be a web designer? Are you building connections? Because graphic design can go in a number of different directions. And so the question is, do you have a plan for what you're going to do with that? And are you building connections? Because again, you don't want to just have this degree and it's like, okay, I can design t-shirts. What are you planning to do with it? Is my question. So I wouldn't say that it's a fluff major, because you can get practical opportunities from having a graphic design degree. But
Right.
again, it's still about, well, what are you going to do with it, and how are you trying to work along in conjunction to getting the degree, networking, opportunities, etc.
I mean, it's you can have a major and never work in the field that you got your major, that you got your degree in. And how do you deal with people who maybe when they were in college they thought one thing, okay, I'm going to get this degree. This is what I want to do. And then they go on to have a career in sports, whether it be basketball, football, whatever, but then they realize, that degree that I got 10, 15 years ago, I'm not feeling it. How do you then structure someone who is not going to work in the major that they or the degree that they have obtained in college to finding something else for them that they really like to do?
So it's very similar when you think about, because for many corporate clients, they end up doing something different, or maybe they do their major for like a year and it's like, I hate this, and now I want to go and do something else. So that happens on all sides.
Mm.
But what it really comes down to is, what skills can we leverage? So even if you're not using your degree, what skills have you developed that can then lend itself to where you would want to go? So we do the career clarity exercise. So just to scene set for the folks here, we spend time in mental wellness and career clarity to make sure that before we proceed to do anything else, we're clear on the direction you want to go in.
Right.
And so once we take the time to say, okay, so this is what you have an interest in, we can then figure out what skills have you developed. So even if we're not using that old degree, what skills have you developed that can lend itself to this new career opportunity? Because when you're an athlete, you build a variety of skills,
Mm-hmm.
strategy, leadership, all of
Mm-hmm.
these things you've been able to build. And so now we can focus that on the direction you want to go in. And then there could be some nuggets from your prior degree that
That you
could
can
could be
use.
beneficial, that you could
Mm-hmm.
leverage. So maybe not the full degree, but there's nuggets that you can leverage. So that's how we do it. Get the career clarity first, and then figure out what pieces we can leverage from there.
And what about those that don't have their degree? Because I know very many that have gone to college, come overseas or played somewhere else, and they didn't actually get their degree. They played 10, 15 years, and then they're looking for the job market when they have literally no work experience. They have no internship, what we talked about before. They have very little to look back on and say, okay, this is what I have. Um, so it's kind of like it's not like gap year, it's like gap decades, but and they also don't have a good degree. How do you work with those kind of clients?
So thinking about, if you don't have a degree, a full degree, you still have taken some sort of relevant coursework, right? So let's say
Right,
you've coming out of an academic program. You didn't finish all 4 years, but you did something. You can
right,
then highlight kind of relevant coursework that will at least show some indication that, hey, you've built something. We
right,
maybe not a full degree, but you got something to work
right.
with. And then kind of marrying that with the skills that you've also learned in the sport, and then putting those two pieces together. And I will tell you, depending on the career that you're going after, a lot of these fields don't necessarily need you to have a degree if you can show that you've got the skills to baseline. So I think about sales. Sure, it'd be nice if you have a degree, but if you show that you can negotiate effectively, that you have certain leadership, that you're able to be aggressive, and that you're coachable, so that you can learn from the
Right.
sales leadership, those are things you can get pulled into, because you can get a degree in just about anything, basket weaving, and still going to sales. So does it
Mm-hmm.
really matter if you have a degree or not?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so it's taking the little pieces that we do have, so the coursework, highlighting anything that's meaningful from that. So if there are courses specifically you can point to, then the experience that you've learned in the field. And then also, pro tip, make sure that you're networking with individuals in the field that you're going into, because then there are people who can say, yeah, they didn't go to school, but here's their resume, let's get them through,
Right.
right? So even if for positions that might require a degree, you having connections, knowing somebody who can speak your name in rooms you can't get into, you having those relationships will make a huge difference. So that's the kind of plan that we're able to build for athletes who don't have a full degree.
Why do you think so many athletes in general, whether they be basketball players, football players, it doesn't matter. Why do you think many of them take such a long time before they start thinking about the end of their career? My thought process is that a lot of us um, feel like we're invincible, like we're going to play forever. But
All
Father
right.
Time is undefeated. I say it all the time, and I think that most of us are so blinded by the single-minded focus of what they're doing at that moment that it's hard for them then to process, okay, I'm 33, I only got a couple more years, if I'm lucky, if I don't get injured or things like that. So it's hard for us to think about what's coming next. Is that what do you think about that?
Yeah, so I've got a couple of different thoughts about, why it's so hard. One of the things that I think about is the idea of starting over scares people,
Yeah,
right? So if you
yeah,
if you focus on the
yeah,
fact that, yeah, I'm going to play forever and I really don't have to think about anything else, because if you think about good God, I'm gonna have to like go get a job or start a business. I mean, that's all. That's overwhelming, right? And you're like, you know what? Maybe not. I don't need to think about that. And the fact is, especially for athletes, you know, for many people, they're defined by the sport that they play and at the level that they've played. You know, if you go to a D1 school and, you know, and all of that, and you're one of the top athletes on the floor, right? Like, you're thinking that the world is your oyster, or
Right.
that you've been defined by your sport and that's who you are. And
Right.
so then trying to think about something else, it's like, but I'm an athlete. You know, I'm not a salesperson. I'm not a coach. I'm not a rep. I'm not a whoever. I'm an athlete. And so then the idea of trying to find yourself and to find a new identity again, it's like,
That's
you know,
scary.
it's a scary thing. It's a
Yeah.
scary thing. And so I think that's where athletes struggle, because if you've been defined by your sport for all this time, and that's why they feel lost when they leave the game, because it's like, who am I now?
Right.
And so nurturing that part of yourself, that I am more than my sport. I have other interests. You know, there's more to me. I have other dreams. And if you nurture that early, you don't get to that point of there's nothing else for me but my sport.
I like to always think about in situations like this about my own career and where my head was at. I mean, I knew that I always wanted to coach. That was my goal. And so I started to prepare myself for that before I actually started to coach, before my playing career was over. So I took the necessary steps to do that. Um, but you know, that's one of those things like when you're a player, you either go into coaching or like you said, you become an agent because you still want to be a part of the game. You still want to have
Close to the
that
sport.
rush. You still want to have that rush of game days or things like that. And I think a lot of athletes use coaching as a kind of pillow. You know, like okay, I know I
Nice
got
soft
experience.
landing. I'm
Yeah,
not
right.
playing, but I'm close to the sport
Right,
still, right?
right.
Yeah.
And maybe they do it for a couple of years and then they kind of realize their their passion or something like that and they reinvent themselves and they realize that they're more than just a game. And what Christina wrote here, we've been at the top of our sport for so long, but what if we can't handle the success in other fields? An identity
Or the
building
failure. Or the
or the
failure,
failure.
right? So you know,
Obviously, if you're still an athlete at 33 years old, 34 years old, you've had some measure of success. So
Mhm.
you're not used to failure. But if you
Right.
go outside your sport, you might be faced with catastrophic failure, or that's what you think at least. And I think for a lot of athletes, that's a really tough burden to bear.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because again, as an athlete, you're designed to be competitive, right? Like you're like that is who you are. You're like, we're trying to win games, we're trying to win championships. And in order for me to have the opportunities, I need to play and be the best that I can be. And especially if you've been grooming those skills for years, you know, being the best isn't far-fetched. But when you're starting over from scratch, in something that's unfamiliar, it's very possible, and it's most of the time the case, that you're not the best just yet because you've got so much to learn. And
Mhm.
that's a hard thing to take when because you're competitive. It's like, no, I want to be at the top. I want to, you know, and it's like, hey, this is a completely different
Right,
ball game here.
right.
And it doesn't mean that you're any less than. It doesn't mean that you're not qualified and that you can't be competitive in this space. But the same way that you had to take time to develop those athletic abilities to get to that level, it's the same thing now when you shift into another industry, that where you're not relying solely on those athletic abilities.
I've got another teammate question. Oh, no, not there. Um, Sam asks, how can you find something out of the sports industry that you can fully commit to?
So
I
the
guess it
way that I
depends on
would,
your interests.
and that's what I was going to say. And so that's time for self-reflection, right? Where you are willing to take the time and I push this with my corporate clients previously as well, is you can't give yourself any excuses when it comes to your career opportunities, and you have to take the time and do the work and do the self-reflection. And so taking that time to reflect on, who am I? What do I enjoy? And take the philosophy and the job title out of it, right? Just think about, what activities do I enjoy doing? when I'm not playing basketball, because you're not playing basketball 24/7, 365, right? You're doing something else
Right.
other than that. So what are you doing? And what do people come to you for that you enjoy helping them with or participating in, right? Do you like solving certain types of problems? So taking some time to do that self-reflection, and then you can take a look to see, well, what kind of career opportunities help to align there. And obviously if you work with a coach, we can help you to talk through the strategy to go about that. But the idea is, starting with the very basics about your interests, and then parlaying that into to understanding, okay, well, what's in the market that I could then lend myself to. And the truth is, in 2022, people will pay you for just about anything,
Mhm.
right? Think about 20 years ago, there was no OnlyFans, and now people are paying to see people's feet on the internet. You know what I mean? So it's like that, people will pay for just about anything. And so thinking about your interests and not putting yourself in a box, but thinking
Mhm.
about your interests, and then seeing what careers exist. Because the thing you don't want to do is finding a job, and trying to force yourself to fit the job, instead of seeing what you want and
Right.
then finding a job that fits
Right.
you. And
Right.
so doing that assessment of what you like first, and then finding a career opportunity after that.
What I always find really interesting is how someone like yourself, who's a career coach, how you can take someone's strengths, or actually what a person might consider to be a weakness, as far, let's say, for example, um, a lot of athletes don't understand that the traits that they had all these years as an athlete transfer into the business world, or whatever world they're going into. Like you said before, usually if you're still playing at a certain age, you were a leader. And those are leadership qualities. But athletes don't think about that. They think only about they were a leader in a sport, but how does that transfer to outside the game? Am I really a leader? Um, and I think it's really interesting how you're able to take what they see as a weakness and turn it, hey, that's actually a positive. Are you surprised with when you work with people that their eyes open up and like, wow, I never thought about it that way?
Yeah, so true story of a client that I was working with this week, and she was in the coaching space after being in athletics, and so now we're moving her out of coaching into something else.
Mhm.
And what I was able to translate for her was around that the recruiting that she did for athletes, that how that was transferable into an HR kind of a people operations function. Because she's just like, well, I wasn't recruiting, it's not the same thing. I'm like, well, actually, when you think about it, when you recruit as an athlete or as a coach or what have you, you're able to assess talent,
Right,
understands people's
right.
capabilities, qualities, and so forth. And then your job is also to make sure that their integration into the
Mhm.
team is as seamless as you can make it, because you want to create the right experience to retain that type of talent. Because obviously, if you're recruiting them, there's somebody that's awesome,
Right.
right? You're not going to, recruit people who aren't up to snuff. So translating that into HR, you're doing the same thing. When you're recruiting talent, you're assessing their qualities, their capabilities, what they can bring, the value, the same thing that you were doing with athletes. And
Mhm.
so sometimes it takes being able to draw those parallels, and the light bulbs like, right? Because it's like, I never thought of it that way. But again, if you haven't been exposed, and that's why I love this work so much, is because I'm able to bring all of my experience to kind of help those light bulbs, start to go off.
I mean, the light bulb thing, that's a great story, because I had those light bulbs talking to you. Like, everyone, I mentioned it earlier that I hit her up, and she's really helped me a lot. And just the simplicity of the answers that you would give me was like, man, how did I not, what am I doing with my life? How did I not think about that, right? Or we discussed a lot about me not selling myself short, because I am not, what I do with my consulting is passion work for me, and I am not the money type of person. So for me, it's difficult for me to put a figure, or a goal. I want to do such and such money wise, when I don't care about stuff like that. My goal is to help athletes. That's my passion, and that's so for me, us talking about that whole dynamic, okay, you get what you pay for it also. Like if you're just going to give the information away, people are going to take it and you're going to be sitting there empty-handed, which I did for many, many years. And I don't mind that, but there has to be that thought process. What you did with me was pretty amazing, where it was like really like, oh, wow, yeah, she's right about that, right? So like we're texting each other like all hours of the morning and stuff, and I'm like, I remember one time for sure when you texted me, you hit me up with a speech message, and I was sitting in my hospital bed when I got my first back surgery, and I was sitting there and I was thinking like, Sean, you have absolutely no idea what you're doing, and this lady is giving you 6 minutes of a message and totally flipped your world upside down. And it's crazy. It was crazy. I really remember that. It was like my time. It was like 3 o'clock in the morning. I couldn't sleep, and your time it was like also late, like 10 o'clock at night. And it's like,
Mhm.
man, you don't know Jack.
And it's not on purpose, right? The idea is that if it's not something that you've had to build a skill set, and it's not
Right.
something that you would think about, and again, when you've been on one track, the idea of thinking about approaching something different or how to approach it, you may just not have the tools. And so that, like I said, that's why I love this work, because I can help the light bulbs go off. And it's like, oh, I had never thought of it that way. And it's and again, that also plays into the point that you made, not selling yourself short. Because a lot of times athletes ask themselves, am I truly equipped to do X or Y?
Right.
And it's helping to build those tie points where it's like, oh no, I do have this experience. Yes, you do.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Can you walk through the process of what someone can expect if they contact you and would like to talk to you about their transition from the game? Can you walk them what they would expect?
Sure, sure. So we have two options right now. So one is if someone wants to work with me on a one-on-one session, those are still open while my program is in pilot. And so in that session, what will happen is prior to that session, they'll be able to kind of fill out a questionnaire and give me some understanding as to where they are, and what they think their needs might be,
Right.
because everyone's starting at a different place. And so if we have that first session, that's an opportunity for us to assess, okay, what are your needs? How can I best help, and so forth. So that's kind of the one-on-one. And for many clients, it's like, okay, well now I need to book multiple of these, because okay, you helped me with this, but now I'm thinking through the rest of the plan,
Right.
right? And then I have my coaching program, which isn't fully launched yet, but it's in pilot mode. And so this is that's a 60-day program where you're kind of going soup to nuts in terms of the journey to getting your career. So we start with mental wellness and career clarity, and we go all the way through the steps to getting a job. So everything from job search strategy, interviewing, personal branding and creating the right messages, salary negotiation, money management, deciding to start your own business, crushing your first 90 days at your job. So that program is available for folks who want something that's a little bit more guided with content. But and then, like I said, I also have the one-on-one options for people who want to kind of work with me directly one-on-one and kind of have that more kind of concierge experience.
And I know you've also co-authored a book. It's not out released yet, but you've also co-authored a book called The Six
Yes.
Figure Athlete. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes. So yes, the book is in production now, and hopefully it'll be released soon. But the Six Figure Athlete is actually Taj Deshawn was actually the one who was able to share that project with me, and so me and other authors, put together some meaningful concepts for athletes, and how can you really become that six-figure athlete, right? Like how do you achieve that goal? And what I wrote on in the book is around networking, and how that is such a tool to help you to build your net worth and build those opportunities for
Right.
yourself. Because you can know all the things, but if you don't know anyone, it's very hard for you to get
Right.
opportunities and maintain them in your
Right.
future. So the book is really about helping athletes with different concepts to help them to achieve that, financial success and financial freedom, and to live the life that they envision for themselves.
I mean, I chuckled at something that you said earlier before the last question, actually, where you were talking about um, where if someone contacts you and then you kind of go through the steps. And I've kind of I think you called it when we were talking, you called it pain points. You talk about
Yes.
what is the thing that bothers them, or what they think they need to know the most. And I've kind of bitten. I hope you don't have it copyrighted, because I've kind of bitten that for my own consulting thing, and
That's okay. That's
that's one of
okay.
the. And I also know about the when they first contact me, I send out a question guide, and one of the things I put in there is, okay, what's your pain point? So I chuckled when you were talking about that, because I was like, okay, I hope she doesn't have a copyright on that, because I'm in big trouble, because I'm just stealing all her stuff right now.
That's okay. That's okay. I mean, because the idea is that in order for someone to work with me, and for me to be able to best serve them, is I
Right,
need to understand what your pain points are,
right,
because I may not be the person for you, depending on what your needs might be, and like we talked about one candidate who was looking to get placed overseas, and I'm like,
right.
hey, that's not my ministry. I have no athletic ability. I can't help you there, but I can help you with thinking through other career opportunities. So I'm happy that you stole it. Yes, that means things are working. That's okay. But like I said, it helps with them identifying their own issues
Right,
before they even talk to me.
right. Have you ever considered writing your own book one day?
Yes, I have. But I told myself I may wait on that a little bit. I think I'm just a chicken. I'm gonna be honest. I think I'm just a chicken, honestly. But I've been thinking about writing a book for like 10 years, and
Mm.
I've just had just that's something I'm like, oh, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. And so finally, I did the co-author thing, and I'm like, okay, so this is a step forward. So little
Right,
by little, I'm
baby
taking a
steps.
step forward,
I
baby
can just
steps. 'Cause
I can just tell you that after writing my book and getting it in my hands as a copy was one of the most fulfilling moments, outside of family kind of things, one of the most fulfilling moments that I've ever had, because I know exactly how much I put into it, and then to see it as an actual copy was amazing. So my suggestion to you would be to do it, because it's an amazing process. Yes, you've co-authored a book and everything, but your own book will be 10 times more joy in that sense when you get it in your hands, because it has your name at the bottom or the top or
right.
whatever. It's got your picture in the background, all looking all fly. So I know the wealth of knowledge that you have, and I think that's something that should be shared with the world. And I would really suggest that you go ahead and even if you just jot stuff down, and you got loose papers everywhere, one day you'll get it together, and you'll be successful. I'm sure of that. No questions whatsoever. So on the personal
Thank you.
side,
I'll stop being a chicken and see if I can actually get on the path, because I have a notes app where I have all the stuff for my
yeah,
book in the
yeah.
notes app,
Yeah.
but I just haven't done anything with it.
So moving to the personal side, we've talked about it before. You moved to Buenos Aires, Argentina, some time
Mhm.
ago, and how was that? It was job based as well, but how was that thought process to actually leave America and move somewhere else? Was it difficult for you?
Um, Not as difficult as you might think. Because I've always wanted to live in another country as an adult. I lived in Barbados as a kid, so if anybody's Bayesian on the line, shout out. But I lived in Barbados as a kid, and so I've always wanted to live in another country and just experience life as an adult outside of the U.S. Um, and then I was kind of just in one of those, I'm ready for something new. The biggest challenge for me was because I moved by myself. So I don't have a lot of family or anything
Mm,
here. So it was just kind of like, okay, what's it gonna be like to move to another country by myself?
right.
But the thing is, I've moved around for work around the US, and I did that by myself. So I'm like,
Right.
well, I mean, it's all the same. So for me, for some people, they have this trepidation about, okay, what's it going to be like? I'm just like, I'll figure it out. I'm like, as long as I have a brain in my head, I can learn the language. I can learn how to navigate here, and it's an adventure. So yeah. So like I said, for most people, I don't know how they would feel, but it wasn't as hard for me to make the decision.
Hablo español.
Un poquito,
Okay.
pero I guess what is it? How do I say that I'm learning?
I don't
Estoy
know
aprendiendo.
because I don't know Jack from Spanish. I was just throwing that out there because I think that's the one thing that I
Oh, you
know
got
from
me
Spanish.
going. I thought we were gonna have a little conversation. I thought we were gonna have a
No,
little conversation.
I could throw some German out there for you, but Spanish. Actually, I'm thinking about learning Spanish actually. So, but that's another story. Um,
We can do this in Spanish. And, when you finally learn, then the two of us we can do this
okay,
conversation
we can
again
help each other out.
in Spanish.
How has living outside of the US changed your view of the country? Because I know for me, it's changed it. I mean, I've lived overseas longer than I lived in America, and I've lived overseas for 27 years. I came over here when I was 22, so it's definitely changed my view on things as well. But how has it been for you living outside the States? How you see America?
Man, I'll tell you. I feel like there are certain conveniences that America has that is
Mhm.
just unmatched,
Right,
right? I
right.
mean, the ability to go to Target or Walmart
Customer
at the
service,
drop of a
huge.
dime, it's I mean, it's something to behold.
Right.
But outside of that, I realize that that there's so much about life that I feel like Americans just don't get or experience. Being able to go to dinner and actually have a meal, whereas in the U.S. it's like you're eating and you're on the phone and you're rushing through the meal in an hour because you've got four other things that you've planned for your evening. Whereas in other countries, people sit and they eat together and they talk and they build relationships over meals. They spend time with their family. It's not always go, go, go. And there's nothing wrong with capitalism. But I feel like when I look at life in America now, it's like it's so capitalist and so
The rat race.
transactional. And like you said, the rat race, that I feel like we lose all those other elements that make us who we are and make life more enjoyable. Plus, there's some political issues going on with the Supreme
Mhm.
Justices and the Supreme Court and stuff. That's another conversation. But just in terms of thinking about life, I feel like other countries, they just approach life differently. Everything's not just transaction based. It's not all about the rat race. It's like people are like, yes, I want to be successful, but I want to spend time with my kids. I want to go on vacation. Americans, they don't take vacation. It's like they'll be on their deathbed and like, but you can still call me on my cell phone. What? I think it doesn't make any sense.
Right.
And so being in another country has really helped me to slow down and really think about what's truly important in life
Mhm.
versus just trying to get to the next level of success or next Bitcoin, right?
Mhm.
So
Um, I know you're on your workout grind. So
yes.
can you explain what your typical off day is? How does Julia chill? How do you relax?
So working out, so I work out 6 days a week. So if I have an off day, I'm most likely going to be working out. So I either run, or I'm a big fan of YouTube videos. So I've got like 8 different people I follow on YouTube for workouts. And then so I'm a big fan of documentaries as well. So Netflix, I will watch every documentary on Netflix. Um, and then in my spare time as well, what's funny is I write, but it's not like writing a book or anything like that. I write stories that I put in like my word. And I just write it because I feel like it's therapeutic for me sometimes. And then I'm a
Yes.
big foodie. So if I'm off, I'm trying a new place for brunch or for lunch or for dinner. I'm big. And I know that that's kind of like, well, you're also working out all the time. I'm like, well, that's part of the reason why I have to keep working out, is because I'm going out and trying every damn thing. And so yeah, so that's the other thing for me, is being a big foodie and just trying out different restaurants.
Okay, so now I've just got a couple more questions. These are very light questions. Favorite
Yeah.
basketball player?
Ooh. So is this like living, playing, active? Like what kind of question?
If you got to choose one basketball player that you say this is my favorite basketball player, he could be dead or alive, it doesn't matter.
Um, so I mean, I hate to sound cliche, but like Michael Jordan, I hate to
Thank
sound
you.
cliche. So I hate to sound cliche, but if I had to pick somebody who's playing right now,
Hmm.
so because was Michael Jordan and Kobe
Hmm.
are almost tied for me. But if it was somebody who's playing right now, I wouldn't even say LeBron or any of them. Steph Curry for me, I feel like is one of the most phenomenal athletes and plays unselfish basketball, and that's why they can continue to win games and win championships. I feel like the game hasn't turned him into someone different. And I feel like fame and success can sometimes get to athletes. And I feel like he stayed true to who he was. I've watched the Warriors from when, Mark Jackson was coaching them and they wasn't winning nothing. Right. And I've seen him continue to maintain a certain level of just even keel and commitment to his teammates and so forth. And then just seeing how he's able to see things on the court that it's just like, how did he even see that play? It just speaks to his skill as a point guard and as an athlete. So like I said, I know that may not be popular because I'm like, oh, LeBron and all these other people, but
Hmm.
Steph Curry for me right now is probably my top athlete.
I think he's a game changer. There are very few basketball players that through their presence or through their playing and ability that have changed the game of basketball. You think there's only a handful. There's Kareem, there's Wilt, there's Michael Jordan, um, Shaq, these generational LeBron, these generational players that have actually forced a change. And for Curry to be as diminutive in size as he is, that totally changed the whole nature of the game. That's incredible, and I think that's a tribute to his skill level, his dedication, and I think that's why, for me, he's also got a spot in, yeah, the Mount Rushmore of players. Now I want to get on to your sneakers.
Yeah,
You're a
yeah.
lifelong sneakerhead. How many pairs of sneakers do you have, and when did your obsession start?
So right now, because so what did I bring with me to Argentina? So I think all together now I've got 100 pairs, I think.
With you
And
in
that's
Argentina?
I I cannot confirm or deny. I plead my fifth. I plead the Fifth Amendment. But I started collecting pretty actively probably about 10 years ago. So there are pairs that I've sold or given away or whatever the case
Mhm.
is. And so where we are right now at about 100 pairs, give or take. So
Okay.
and so
Um, so based on that, there's a fire. You can only grab one pair. What
oh
pair are you
God.
grabbing? What pair are you
Oh
grabbing?
no. Oh my gosh. Oh. It's only one pair. Are you
You,
sure?
you
I've
got
got
you
two
got a
hands. I've
you
got two
got
hands.
you got your neighbor's baby in your hand. You got your birth certificate over here. You got a whole bunch of other stuff in your hand, and you've only got these two fingers to grab those one pair of shoes. That's all you got. What are you taking?
I gotta take my black cement threes. I gotta take my Air Jordan black cement threes. That's my all time favorite sneaker. And so that for me, that's a sneaker that that is so iconic, especially to Brooklyn and New York. And so yeah, I mean, other people may grab something else, but those I gotta
Yeah,
take those. Everyone else can burn, but I
I,
gotta take those.
I feel you. Last question. What
Okay.
motivates you to keep going?
My ability to help people.
Good
Um,
answer.
I feel like there's nothing when people tell me that, listen, because of you, I was able to do X, or
I'm
this is what
totally
happened,
with
or
you.
you know what I mean, or and celebrating the job offer, the
Mhm.
higher salary, or whatever it is. It's the ability to help people, and because I have an opportunity to help people make their lives better. And when you're feeling lost, or you feel like you don't have opportunities, and then you're able to find your way, and then you're able to get to the goal that you have. I mean, for me, there's nothing like it.
Yeah, you would have taken the words out of my mouth. I would have said exactly the same thing. So Julia, you've hit the shot at the buzzer. I really appreciate you coming on and being a part of my show and dropping major gems around that people will for sure be able to use, and not just athletes, but people in general. And that's what this show is all about. I want to be able to help people. I want to have guests on that can bring value to my teammates' lives, to the viewers' lives, and that's what you did. And I really, really super appreciate having you in coming in from Argentina, um, showing up live here, different time difference and everything that's involved, and that you really, yeah, like I said, you really gave some value to my viewers. And I mean, you and I are going to talk anyway, and we got some things we got to find
Yes,
it. We got to find a time. We got to hook up, and
I know.
because we got
We're
things we got to
terrible.
talk about that these people don't even know about yet. So we definitely got to hook up. We got to find the time. We have to make time, right?
Make
Okay,
time.
and get on with what we got going on. But I say it all the time that I'm really thankful for everyone that comes on, but there are certain guests where I'm like so incredibly thankful, and you're one of them. And thank you for coming into my life. Thank you for answering all my crazy questions at 3 o'clock in the morning. And I'm sure I'm gonna have one like as soon as we get off. I'm like, Julia, I got a
Right. It's
question.
gonna be three
I got
o'clock
I
again.
got
Like
a
I thought we
question.
just talked about this.
It's a quick question. It's a quick question this time. You can answer it real quick, and it's gonna be like 3 days of conversation. But so like I said, I really appreciate it, and yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. I really appreciate it. And like I said, next time we can maybe do it in Spanish if you take the time to take the time to learn. So and we can try our Spanish out on each other. But thank you again, and I hope that you have a great evening.
Thank you. Get on out of here. Let me say goodbye to the teammates.
All right, I'm out.
Bye, Julia. So teammates, I think you can tell the energy with her was amazing, and she really, like I said before, she really knows her stuff. She's helped me a great deal, and I know for all of you athletes that are either transitioning, or let's even go to the high school or college kids that are out there. She said it as well. Like, you got to get started with your transition early and don't wait to the last minute. But even if you're waiting to the last minute, people like her do a good job of helping. And there's something that I think about. Like, you've had us athletes, we've all had coaches all our lives. We've had coaches from the time we were wee little to professional ranks, and everything in between. So why not find yourself a career coach? Why not have someone guide you, help you, coach you, um, as you move on to the next phase of your life outside of basketball, outside of sports in general? So think about that. You've had a coach your whole life. Why not have one when you're transitioning as well? So I hope I hope what Julia was able to bring over will make the wheels click in some of you, that you don't wait till the last minute, that you take your own responsibility for what you want to do in your career later. And yeah, and hopefully that helps, what she put out there. As usual, I will put all her contact stuff, her IG, everything in the description in the YouTube video that I'll post by tomorrow. And please contact her. She really knows her stuff. I think you can't pay her as much as what she's worth, and I know I can't. And so really, so give her some support, and if you know anyone that needs some career guidance, then please pass that information on. Please pass this video along and share it with those who need it. That's what this series is all about: helping people, helping each other. So thank you for joining. Really appreciate every one of you that showed in, even if you were just here for 30 seconds. Um, like I said, the information will be out there for anyone that needs it. And that's the most important thing for me. So good night, teammates. Be safe. And I hope to see you next week. Bye bye.